Hello. Well, now that we've all recovered from Christmas, we're back to working on the robot boat. You'll remember, if you watched any earlier videos, that we had a rather unsuccessful but eventful test on Southampton Water immediately before Christmas. And as a result of that, we identified a whole series of modifications that we wanted to make. So I've been working on making those modifications, and I'll show you what I've been up to. Just going through some modifications we've made. This is a radio control box, and the RC receiver is inside this box, and it has one aerial sticking up that way and another one which goes that way. We also had an extension aerial, not this black box but the thing inside it, which was on this very short wire plugged into there, and so we just bundled it in, and all three aerials were inside. And we found that the whole thing was not high enough up when we were in the sea. So what I've done now is bought at enormous expense a 24-inch extension. This cable is exactly the same as this one, except it's 24 inches long and has two little white doofers on the end. It costs £15, which must be the biggest retail markup in the history of the universe. Anyway, I mean, I could have perhaps bought some individual white plugs and made one up myself, or extended this wire by cutting it, but I just thought, bugger it, I'll order it and be damned. So we now have this additional aerial which we can put up the stay like that. Not sure, I probably should be vertically polarised, which would just give us a little bit more reach. The other thing we've done is put three coloured LEDs on this side of the main electronics box, where they can be seen by the on-deck Dragon video camera. We did have before, we had this rather bright strobe light which was mounted just coming out of the rudder box in a non-waterproof way, and we could sometimes see that from the shore. It was quite useful, but when we were testing in the sea we had to put this thing actually inside the rudder box, because otherwise it wouldn't have been waterproof, and we couldn't see it at all. So I've dispensed with that, and instead we have a red light which shows us when the radio control is effective, and a green light that comes on once every minute in sync with GPS time. And the purpose of that is to help us synchronise the on-deck video with the telemetry replay without necessarily having the video timestamp exactly correct, which we frequently don't have. And in order to drive those LEDs, I've had to put three FETs up here because there's no more space on the original Vera board. So we've got a little mini Vera board sitting there, blue tacked to the side. If I put radio control on, the red light should go on like that. Now I have radio control. If I turn the radio control off, the red light should go off. And the green light should come on for 10 seconds once every minute, because it just waits until GPS time is at an exact minute, and then turns itself on for 10 seconds. The other thing I want to do is to test whether this new auxiliary aerial is actually working. So I thought I would put this in something approaching a Faraday cage. Not sure exactly if this is going to work, but right, so I've wrapped the radio control receiver in tin foil and put an aluminium saucepan on top of it, and we've got the auxiliary aerial up there, and we'll see whether it works. Yes, it does. Okay. So I think that proves, albeit with a very strong signal, that it is working. Another thing I've done after the disaster last time at Weston was I got this shopping, I think this is a child shopping bag, and made a little hook so that it will hook on the bottom of my video camera tripod. I tend to put a couple of bricks in that in the hope that it will stop it blowing over and thereby preserve my video camera for a few more months, hopefully. Also, as reported in the last video, we've changed the PID weights for the helmsman loop as shown here. Another thing I've done is put in a monitor to measure the current consumption of the electronics. Previously I was using an ADC converter in the Micromite to measure the voltage, the battery voltage, but this is always between 4.9 and 5.1 volts because it comes out of a LiPo power pack, so it doesn't give us any useful information. And I thought we definitely need to know the power consumption of the electronics. So what I've done is I've used one of these ZXCT 1009 high side monitors, and I've used it with a sense resistor of 0.1 ohms between the 5-volt battery and the electronics. So now we should get on the telemetry a direct measure of the current consumption, excluding the radio control and the LEDs that I've put on the front of the box, which are for test purposes. So when we got to Bray Lake, we found there was a massive paddleboard race had been organised, which went right across the place where we normally test the boat. So we couldn't possibly test at that time because we'd have been sabotaging the race. So we retired to a pub and had an early lunch, and then came back after lunch in the hope of running the test. Well, here's Robin with boat 12, the very fast blue sail boat, and here is Dick, who is fettling Woodstock. For example, here we can see this. Watch the rudder just to check that it's doing well. Do you want me to go round the circle or any? Yes, please. That should do it. I'll go right round. Yeah, you've done it. Try not to fall over. we can but hope. Tell if it's recording. So much. Does that mean it's recording? I don't know. Yeah, it is. It's clocked up. Oh dear. Yeah. Got to be careful what I say. Sorry about that, Peter. Damn! I never put the camera. I didn't put the drag and touch on. I put it on for 7 seconds. We're doing well. We're doing well. So we've got no telemetry whatever. And it's fine. No, it's not. It's true. I put it on, recorded the time, put it on so we didn't use up the battery. Yeah. Then he said, right, we're ready to go. So I picked it up and walked down there without thinking about just turning back on again. If I were you, I should just see if you can. The video see if you can radio control it. Okay, the radio control is there.
Yeah.
Because we've got no...
I'll probably find mine's going to go in.
On the bonnet. It could be behaving absolutely fine, but I've got no telemetry.
The question is whether
So it responded to the radio control, is it?
Yeah, luckily, because we didn't test that either.
What happened? You recovered it from over there, did you?
He returned to base.
Yeah.
So the jib is stalling.
Yes.
All the pressure's on the back, which keeps turning it into wind.
Right.
Which would help at the point of turning.
Yes, but not generally.
Not generally.
And now we've got a little bit of a sabotage going on here. It'd be funny if he falls over onto our boat.
It's just that gentleman.
Yeah. So luckily he's fallen over before.
I think that unnerved him. I think he was trying to steer around it and lost control of his own sail.
Yeah. Well, it was clear that the boat was not performing rationally, so we abandoned the test. And my first concern on getting home was to discover why there was no telemetry, nothing at all coming over the LoRa link. And at first I couldn't see anything wrong, but eventually I discovered a terrible mistake that I had made. This is a close-up of the main electronics board, and there are two unpolarized plugs that plug into headers on the board, one for the LoRa telemetry link and one for the wind sensors on the top of the mast. And as you can see here, I'd put them in completely the wrong way round. The LoRa plug in the wind socket and the wind plug in the LoRa socket, and for good measure the wind plug is back to front. Given this, it's a miracle that anything was working at all. But I subsequently discovered that by plugging the wind plug in back to front, I had actually blown up the Bourne's encoder, which tells us the position of the wind vane, which was a bit of a nuisance because it's the most expensive thing in the boat. It cost £50. So I had to order another one. So after getting a new encoder, I discovered that the Delrin bush that fixes the wind vane to the top of the encoder had gone rather skew-whiff, so I decided to make a new one. Even I can part off Delrin okay. Well, this thing is beginning to get up my nose. I thought I'd nearly finished this new bush, but I just overshot with the intermediate drill here, so I've got to make the whole thing again. Bloody hell. Well, I've got the wind unit under test here. It seems to be working. That's the SPI data reading the wind direction encoder. You can see as I operate the vane, we get different binary values on the magenta trace. I don't like the large amount of noise spikes on the plus 5 volt and 0 volt lines, despite them being decoupled, but adding additional decoupling, either of big or small values, does not get rid of those. This is powered from a USB cable at the moment, but luckily the SPI protocol triggers it on the edge of the clock in the middle of the signal, and hopefully it's okay, but it's got more noise on it than I would like to see. Well, there you go. One stupid mistake, really a design fault in having similar plugs instead of non-matching plugs, and not even having them polarised, and assuming that my eyes were still 20/20 when they really obviously aren't. So one simple mistake causes a whole cascade of problems. Anyway, I've got the boat back together again, and the batteries are charged, and we're ready to do another test, which I shall be doing with Dick on Bray Lake tomorrow. So hopefully we can then test all the changes that we've made and make some progress. Thanks for watching.